Chapter 1. Cole glanced at his watch and noted the time, jerking one side of his mouth up in irritation. He only had half an hour before he was scheduled to meet his partner for a witness interview across town, and his spur-of-the-moment lunch date had yet to show. "She's only 10 minutes late, and traffic is pretty bad this time of day." The half-hearted excuse he made on her behalf didn't alleviate his annoyance, so he glanced again at the 1960s-styled watch on his wrist, dragging a fingertip across the plain black band and unadorned face. Sure, he could use his phone to track time, as so many did today, but the watch had been his Scottish grandfather's and was symbolic on multiple levels, so he wore it proudly, as a reminder of both tradition and family. "More coffee?" the young waitress asked as she passed his table on her way back to the serving bar. Cole lifted a hand and shook his head to refuse, but then he graced her with a smile in an attempt to hide his foul temper. After all, it wasn't her fault he was stuck waiting, and the staff here was exceptionally friendly. When he'd first entered the cafe, he'd cast a rueful eye at the bright green walls and muttered, "Interesting color." The girl had cheerfully explained the shade was called Anjou, before seating him at a repurposed metal table of bubblegum pink. Swearing to himself he'd never again agree to meet anyone in an unfamiliar place, Cole studied the vibrant walls and wondered if he'd ever actually seen a pair that color. He didn't think so. The coffee/smoothie bar was vintage-inspired, but with the palette of an Easter egg basket. Aromas flowed from fruity to coffee-laced, depending on whichever beverage was being prepared behind the counter. At the moment, the air was heavily scented with strawberry. He squirmed in the dainty chair that his body was much too big for. The place was definitely a female haunt, and the surrounding high-pitched chatter made him run a finger inside his shirt collar. He was beginning to feel claustrophobic. Good thing his partner Trevor wasn't here to witness his discomfort. Big, tough homicide cop getting edgy because he was flanked on all sides by women. Normally, the attractive company would be his proverbial day at the beach, but something about the pastel atmosphere here was just wrong. He felt an overwhelming need to fix a pipe or adjust his jock. Suddenly, the idea of being stood up held a certain appeal. He'd give Rachel 5 more minutes. Then he was out. A tinny little jingle rang out as the cafe door swung open, and Cole looked up to see if she'd finally arrived. When he saw the familiar face in the doorway, his chest lightened along with his mood. He smiled and waved to get Kylie's attention, then nodded as Lucia strolled in behind her. Witches on a smoothie run. Would he ever get used to that reality? Not only was there a coven of witches living in Savannah, but they'd been tasked with saving the city from demonic destruction, and Cole was honored to be one of their inner circle, to be considered a friend. Before Trevor had fallen for one of the witches, both he and Cole had been dragged into the middle of a supernatural war, one neither of them had ever suspected was going on in the city they were both sworn to protect. Knowing what they did now, the two of them accepted the existence of demons and magic as easily as they did beer and Monday Night Football. Well, almost as easily. It would help if they could actually see the monsters like the witches did, but he and Trevor were only human. Cole stood when Kylie bounced over to greet him, her face lit up with a bright grin. The energetic blonde was the youngest of the coven, and her unabashed vitality was always uplifting. "Hey, handsome." She gave him a one-armed hug as Lucia sidled up behind her. The tall Spanish woman was mildly subdued, and Cole had a feeling he knew why. 2 weeks had passed since Lucia had returned from South America in search of an ancient, prophecy-fulfilling dagger. Like the witches before her who'd been called to face an individual challenge, Lucia had found a man and fallen headlong into love. But unlike the others, she had yet to complete her trial. Time was ticking by, and with every day that passed, the coven grew more anxious. Trevor had been giving Cole status updates as he received them from his girlfriend, Hayden. She was the coven's medium, and was as concerned as everyone else.